We can get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Shakayla Alvarenga. I'm the Director of Public Programs here at the Mob Museum. Thank you to those who were able to join us in person. This is also being live streamed, so thank you to those joining us online today for today's Community Safety Forum. So this forum is presented in partnership with the Nevada Attorney General's Office. We'll be discussing the rise in scams related to the coronavirus pandemic. Please welcome Senior Deputy Attorney General Sheri Ann Forbes to the podium.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today. So, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, scammers are always finding different ways to try to make a buck illegally and by hurting other people. So, we just wanted to go over some of the things that we've been seeing going on in the last year. Whoops, I think I went too far. There we go. Right. So let's take a look at some of the things that I am going to, oh, this is really sensitive, okay, that I'm going to cover here today. So these are sort of the scams that we've been finding related to COVID over the past almost a year and a half now, I guess. We've seen some identity theft problems, job scams, because lots of people were out of jobs last year. Scams related to vaccine distribution, contact tracing scams, utility scams, and charity fraud. And we'll go over each one of these in turn. So one of the things to be aware of with regard to identity theft is if you've gotten your vaccine, a lot of people have been posting their vaccine card online to show that they've gotten their vaccine. We really discourage people from doing this because your vaccine card will contain both your patient number and your birth date, as well as, of course, your name. And most times it will even say where you got your vaccine. And these are all things that you really don't want to publicize to the world because, unfortunately, scammers find ways to use that information to steal your identity. So if you do want to post online that you've gotten your vaccine, it's best to, you can take a picture of the Band-Aid or the little sticker that they give you or something along those lines. I think Facebook even has these little frames that you can put around your picture, your profile picture, but avoid publicizing your actual card because that's opens you up to scams. Okay. Another thing that we find is job scams have been happening a lot. Again, because people are out of work, they're more susceptible to sort of falling prey to these people. Some of the kinds of scams that we see are reshipping scams. This is where someone will answer a job ad and they're told all they have to do is receive packages, repackage them, and send them off to their ultimate destination. A lot of the times they'll say, we'll reimburse you for the shipping. They never get reimbursed. And a lot of times what's happening is you're receiving stolen goods or counterfeit goods, and a lot of times you're shipping them overseas to different countries around the world. And eventually they'll just stop contacting you, you'll never get reimbursed, you'll never get paid. And unfortunately you might find yourself in hot water for receiving stolen goods. So that's one job to sort of be aware of. Virtual assistant scams, where again, someone will contact you and say, we want you to set up a virtual office or be a virtual assistant of some sort. They'll possibly send you a check to put in your checking account and ask you to rent equipment and do all these expenditures, but then the check bounces and you never hear from these people again and you're out a lot of money. Another one that we've seen specifically during the COVID epidemic is the unemployment benefit scam. A lot of people have had their identity stolen and had unemployment claims made in their name with DETR, with the Department of Education, Training, and Rehabilitation here in Nevada. And it's a lot of people have found this happening. Actually, I was a victim of this as well. My employer contacted me and said, just so you know. So I put a credit freeze on all my credit reports so that nobody can open any accounts unless they call me first, because they obviously have my social security number, my birth date, where I work, my name, all that stuff, for them to have been able to have done a fraudulent unemployment claim in my name. So that's unfortunate, but something to look out for. Okay, vaccination distribution scams. We're finding, first of all, it's important to know that you will never ever have to pay for a vaccine. You don't have to pay for the vaccine card. You don't have to pay for the administration of the vaccine. You don't have to pay to make an appointment for the vaccine. So if anyone's asking you to do any of those things, it's a scam. Vaccines are only right now administered through official channels. You can always check with the Southern Nevada Health District to make sure that the place that you've signed up for is a certified facility. Also, you need to be very wary about any products that you see advertised online or in emails saying that they can cure COVID or prevent COVID or any of those kinds of things. Nothing of that sort has been through the FDA. So if you have any questions about any supplements that you see, you can always ask your pharmacist. Also, there have been companies selling fake vaccine cards, either blank ones or ones that have already been filled out. Just be aware that that's actually illegal for someone to sell them, and if you ever come across something like that, you should definitely report it to our office. And a vaccine card, like I said, will always be provided free when you get vaccinated. You never have to purchase one. So the CDC has developed these apps, contact tracing apps, that anyone can put on their phone. And it's to help with finding out whether you've been inadvertently exposed to someone with COVID somewhere in the community. Always, if you're going to use one of these, always make sure that you get it either from Apple or Google or from that website, the nvhealthresponse.nv.gov. And the way it works is actually quite interesting. It's completely anonymous and obviously voluntary. And what happens is that the app generates a random code for your device. And every 10 to 20 minutes, that code changes. And the idea is that none of your personal information is ever sent anywhere. It's all encrypted on your phone as well. And so what happens is if you are in close proximity to someone who later tests positive for COVID, the Bluetooth device on both your devices will sort of know that each other was in contact at a specific time based on the anonymous code, and that information gets sent to the Nevada Health District. Now, only the state has access to the system, so no one else can have it, and the state will never receive any personal information except your contact information. And if you do get in contact with someone who has been tested positive for COVID, you'll get an in-app notification. You will never, ever get a text. So if you ever get a text message that says, you've been exposed to COVID, click on this link, that's a scam, don't do it. Okay, so you might get a phone call from the state, but they will never ask for personal information. They'll never say, what's your social security number? They'll never ask you for payment information of any sort. What they will do is they'll ask you whether you have the app, and then they will inform you that yes, you have been exposed to someone who tested positive, but they won't tell you who it is, okay? All that is anonymized, so your name is never kept by the state, your information is never kept by the state. And once you delete the app off of your phone, all the information gets erased, okay? So it's completely anonymous. And it's just a really good way for the Nevada Health District to sort of track the spread of COVID and to notify people before they possibly can pass it on to other people. Okay, the kinds of utility scams that we see are solar, just your general utilities, and also door-to-door sales and scams. So let's talk about rooftop solar for a second. There are a ton of solar companies out here in Nevada, and you can get solicited either door-to-door, robocalls, or advertisements online. I get a ton of robocalls. I don't know about you guys, but I'm constantly getting robocalls. One of the ones that concerns our office is they'll say, thank you for being an NV Energy customer. They're not affiliated with NV Energy. NV Energy doesn't sell solar to customers. What NV Energy does is a lot of their energy is generated through solar that comes through your normal channels that you pay for. But they don't sell solar to customers, right? So always be wary when you get that. Make sure that you know what your rights are with renewable energy and your Bill of Rights. If you go to the NV Energy website, you can print off what your Bill of Rights are with regard to renewable energy. If you're considering hiring someone for solar, make sure you check with the Nevada Contractors Board and confirm that they actually have a license that's in good standing. You can also review the Public Utilities Commission's tips on choosing a solar provider, and always review the contract carefully and in detail before you sign it. So if it's a door-to-door solicitation, you might want to ask for more time to look at it before you sign it. Okay, and we'll talk some more about door-to-door sales in a minute, but there are a lot of different ways that solar companies try to get you to pay for solar. They'll do lease arrangements, you can buy it straight out, you can finance it, and sometimes if you don't read the fine print, you might find that the way that you're paying for solar isn't worth the savings that you get by going solar. You end up either paying more than you normally would or almost as much. So you have to be very careful that you understand what kind of contract you're signing. Because everybody's at home, obviously, this is why we get a lot of utility scams. But they've always been in common even before COVID, because everybody obviously has utility. Another one that they'll do is they'll call you or come to your door and say, your bill hasn't been paid in several months, and you need to pay it now or we're going to cut it off. And a lot of the times they'll make these calls like 4 o'clock on Friday. And so you're panicking and thinking, oh my gosh, my lights are going to go off if I don't pay them right away. You will never get a phone call out of the blue from a utility company saying that you owe 5 months of utilities without having gotten something in the mail saying that you're overdue or you have a certain amount of time to pay your bill. So when this happens, especially late in the afternoon or on a Friday, be wary. Always call the utility company yourself from a phone number off of your bill as opposed to something that the person talking to you gives you as a phone number. Okay. So again, just don't be pressured. If they tell you your utility is about to be shut off, another thing that you can do is ask the caller or the person at your door to verify what was your last payment and how much was it. And if they can't tell you that, then they're not likely to be legitimate. Okay. Now this is another scam that we've seen, which is rather unfortunate. Someone will try to sell you a utility account at a discount. They'll either phone you or come to your door and say, hey, you know, we're offering a discount if you come through us and you can get your utilities this way. And what's actually happening is that while the account might be a real account, it's in somebody else's name, and so it's a fraudulent account. And you won't necessarily know that until you get the bill in the mail. So again, be wary if someone comes and says they can give you your utilities at a discount, because it might just be that it's a stolen account that they're selling you, which I was rather surprised to find that out. That's kind of an interesting scam. So going back to door-to-door sales again, if someone comes to your door and says that they are from X company, they should be able to produce an identification to show you that they are from that company. They might also be wearing a uniform if it's something like NV Energy. You can always call the company yourself from a number, again, not from the person standing before you, but a verified number to find out if that particular person is a real sales representative. And when you have a door-to-door solicitation, you have a certain set of rights that are specific to door-to-door sales. if you sign a contract as a result of a door-to-door solicitation, by law, you have 3 days in which you can cancel it. And they must give you a copy of the contract right on the spot, and they must also give you a notice of cancellation that you can fill out and send in if after 3 days, or before 3 days is up, you decide you want to cancel the contract. So those are all things that are written in the consumer protection statutes. And if any of those things don't happen, then it might be a scam that you're going through. And if it happens where you try to cancel a contract within the 3 days, or you don't get a notice and there's no way for you to cancel it, that's something that you can report to our office for us to investigate. Okay, charity fraud is another thing that we see a lot of, unfortunately. And especially with COVID, a lot of times they'll call up and ask for money for the COVID pandemic. But what they'll do is a lot of times the name of the organization will sound really familiar to you, like childhood cancer or something along those lines, something that pulls at your heartstrings. And they may give you vague answers as to what the money is, what goes to, things along those lines. Always ask for a written copy of their mission statement. And a lot of times this is on the phone as well. So you can say, just send it to me. I'm not going to make a donation until I see this. Or ask for their annual report or proof that the contribution is in fact deductible if that's what they're claiming. Not all charities are deductible, so that might not apply. Never give cash to someone at the door. Never be pressured to make a donation right on the spot. Legitimate charities won't pressure you to do that. Sometimes they will say, we can send over a courier to your house right now and collect cash. I would say, be wary of doing that. If they offer you any sort of a guarantee of winning a sweepstakes, that's a sign that it might be a scam. Or any other promise for that matter. Just, be wary of that. And obviously just never give out your credit card, bank information, or social security number to anybody who you haven't verified. And quite frankly, they wouldn't need your social security number anyway. So. Okay, so these are the places that you can go to check if the charities are legitimate. One of the interesting things about some of these scams is that the way they are formed is as PACs, political action committees. And there's a whole industry of people who collect tens of millions of dollars every year from people by calling them on the phone and saying that we're from X, charity or whatever, when in fact only about 1 or 2% of the money that they collect actually goes to the charity. So you really need to ask some questions about where the money goes and get proof about it, and make sure that they are a 503c corporation as opposed to a political action committee, which has different rules. And you can go to the IRS website and find out some of that information. Okay. Okay. If you ever need to file a complaint, this is where you would go for the Attorney General's office. It's really simple. It's just ag.nv.gov. And there's a tab that you can click on for complaints. You can file the complaint right online, or you can mail it in. You always need to sign it and give as much information as you can possibly provide. Okay. And we will investigate it. We investigate every single complaint that we get. If we see a pattern, then it's possible that we might have a bigger case that we have to investigate. But every single complaint gets read by a Deputy Attorney General and gets investigated. So, and I see I've gone a lot faster than I thought I was going to go here. But, so are there any questions? Does anybody have any particular issues that they've seen that they would like me to address? Yes, sir.
Yesterday, actually,
Do I think we have a microphone somewhere?
Here you
Yesterday, I received in the mail a letter which looked very valid. I think it was from the National Restaurant Association or something like that. And they were saying that they had been compromised and my social security number and name has been given out. And they listed a whole number of, like Equifax and Transamerica to contact with legitimate numbers. But then they said I should call this number and get their free whatever identity theft protection. And then I realized I've never even paid in a restaurant for a credit card in my life. I always paid cash, and I thought, well, how would this even be possible?
Right.
So, I mean, have you heard of anything like this, or is that?
I have not heard, I've heard of that happening, but I haven't heard of it happening to someone who has never made
I never have.
Right.
I always paid cash in a restaurant, and
Yeah,
I still do.
That's a really interesting, that's an interesting problem.
I kept the letter just, to keep it, but
Yeah.
the rest of the stuff was legitimate, telling you what to do.
Right.
In other words, make sure you contact this, and here's your, your rights. But there was one word in the letter that was inappropriate. It
Okay.
didn't fit in the sentence. And I know that's kind of a key to something, too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that actually sounds like it might be a scam, because a lot of times these things look really legitimate, like really legitimate. And, but that might actually be a scam. If you don't mind sending that to our office in a complaint, that would be terrific. But what you can do in that situation is, rather than call up and get their identification protection, whatever that they're offering, that might just be a way of getting your social security number and your information.
That's what I was concerned with.
So what you would need to do instead, just to make sure, if it was actually legitimate, is to call the credit bureaus themselves. And you can put, also, they have different buzzwords that do different things. You have to look and see what each website says, but they have freezes, they have locks. They have this thing where you can turn off your credit so that nobody can open anything, but when you need to do it, you can turn it on and turn it off again.
They explained all that in the letter.
Right.
That's what it was, that's why it seemed sort of semi-legitimate, but
Yeah.
again, I don't know how they would ever even get my number.
Yeah, that's really, really, really strange, and I think our office would definitely be interested in taking a look at that
I'll mail
letter,
it
for
to you.
sure. But if you do the credit bureaus, you wouldn't need any other identification
Right.
protection. So in that case, you did the right thing by not calling them.
Okay, well, thank you.
Certainly. But yeah, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I will definitely bring that up in our office. That's an
Do you have a
interesting
card
one.
or something?
I'm sure I do, and
Place,
I'll put
yeah.
them out on the table.
Okay.
So that, yeah.
Okay, thank
yeah,
you.
For sure, thanks. Anything else?
Sheri, we did have a question from someone online
Yes.
who asked about the fake vaccine cards.
Yes.
They said, do the fake vaccine cards look like the real ones, and how are people getting these kinds of cards?
There are various ways. I mean, apparently they've been sold online, or people have been solicited by emails, and from what I understand, they look exactly like the real thing. I mean, there's probably very subtle little differences. I haven't actually taken a look at a fake one myself, so it would be hard for me to say what exactly to look for, but you shouldn't be getting it anywhere at any time except in a vaccination clinic. If you're not getting it from a legitimate vaccine, as somebody's putting a vaccine in your arm, it's usually illegal and fake. Yeah.
Another question that we received was about the job scams as well, and someone asked if your department deals with the fraudulent cases that we saw over the past year, and if there's still a backlog as well.
That's an excellent question. Our office actually does not deal with that. You would have to report that to the Department of Education, Training, and Rehabilitation, DETR, D-E-T-R. They're the ones that are looking out for that. And the way you find out about it is your employer will get a notice saying that someone has filed a claim in your name. So your employer might be the first one to find that out before you, and that's certainly what happened in my case, but that needs to be reported to DETR, not to our office.
Just one more. Someone else asked, one second, if I can pull this up. While I try to pull this up, are there any other questions in the room that anyone has? Okay, one moment. And Sheri, I believe you have some paperwork as well over on the side that, can you just explain some of the paper
Certainly.
you have?
So we have some brochures over here. A lot of what I talked about is in brochures, as well as just general fraud prevention, various places that you can get in touch. There's information on how to make reports to the FTC as well, the Federal Trade Commission, and just a number of steps that you can do if you find yourself the victim of fraud or how to avoid fraud. So there's several different brochures here, and when we're all done, I encourage everyone to take a copy of whatever you need. Yeah, so.
Okay, and my phone unfroze. So someone said I got a call on a Saturday morning saying they were calling from Nevada State and checking about my vaccine. Is this something that you've seen before? This person said, I knew it was fake, called the number, and they were a scam.
I personally haven't heard of that. If you have any information, like where the phone number came from or anything of that sort, then making a complaint would be a good idea. A lot of times, unfortunately, these phone numbers are spoofed, and so there might not be a whole lot we can do. Again, the state is not going to call you and find out if you've gotten your vaccine, but I do know, like for instance, I took my daughter to get her vaccine. She got the Pfizer 2-dose one, and she got one here and one in California. And the pharmacy called me to say your daughter's due for the second one. So it can be legitimate. It just depends on the situation. But I don't think the state is going to call and say, "Have you gotten your vaccine?"
Gotcha. Anything else that you wanted to mention?
One other thing. One of the things that we saw, especially right when the shutdown happened, when none of us could get toilet paper or water, was there was a lot of price gouging going on. Now, Nevada doesn't have or didn't have a price gouging statute last year, but the legislators have now passed a price gouging statute in Nevada. So as of October 1st, price gouging is now a consumer protection statute that we can deal with. So if you ever get into a situation where, again, somebody's selling toilet paper for $100, make a complaint to our office. That's something that we can deal with now. So.
Thank you. So before we head out, Sheri, I know we'll be here for a few minutes. If you had a question that maybe you didn't want to say out loud, you're more than welcome to come and speak with her. But again, thank you all for coming to today's forum, and thank you, Sheri Ann Forbes, for this very useful information, which I'm sure within the coming months will still be an issue, unfortunately.
Yeah,
so thank you for the
unfortunately,
work you're doing in the community as well. A round of applause.
Thank you.